Brooke Logan's afternoon began like any other, sunlight glinting off the windshield of her convertible as she cruised down the coastal highway, her thoughts drifting between family matters at Forrester Creations and the warm memory of Ridge's embrace that morning. Then, without warning, a rogue tire came loose from a passing semi, careened into her lane, and shattered her front wheel with a deafening crack. The car fishtailed wildly, metal groaning against asphalt, and Brooke's heart slammed against her ribs as she fought for control. Doors slammed, the convertible spun in a deadly pirouette, and in the space of heartbeats it careened off the guardrail, skidding to a halt mere inches from the cliff's edge. Blood pulsed in Brooke's ears, vision blurred, and the world tilted at a perilous angle as she felt the car begin to slide toward the abyss. Panic clawed at her throat, and in that instant, a figure materialized like an angel from the haze of smoke and screeching tires. He was tall, clad in a charcoal gray leather jacket that bore scuffs of someone who lived on the road, dark hair tousled by the wind, eyes the color of storm clouds and the set of a man accustomed to swift action. Without hesitation he vaulted onto the guardrail, legs braced against the crumbling concrete, and with a strength Brooke scarcely believed he possessed, he yanked open her door and hauled her free just as the car lurched again, spinning into the void with a final, tortured scrape of metal. She hit the ground hard, chest heaving, the world spinning, and then she looked up at him into eyes she thought she'd never see again. "Jack," she whispered, a tremor of disbelief threading through her voice. Jack Marone, the man she'd loved so fiercely a decade ago, the man who'd vanished from her life without a trace the night before their wedding, Jack Marone, her long-lost knight in shining leather. Shock and relief warred across Brooke's features as she stared at him, and he knelt beside her, brushing a fingertip against the cut on her forehead, his jaw clenched with concern. There was something in his gaze, a vulnerability that matched her own, and the world narrowed to the two of them, isolated on that desolate stretch of highway by the roar of distant traffic and the lingering tendrils of dust and despair. Had fate conspired to reunite them in this moment of peril? Or was this the beginning of a storm that would sweep away the fragile peace Brooke had fought so hard to rebuild? She tried to speak, but her voice caught. Jack's rough voice filled the space. "Are you hurt badly?" His accent, still familiar, carried the weight of memories they'd buried deep, stolen kisses under moonlit skies, whispered promises in the hush of night. I'm okay," she managed, frowning as pain lanced through her side. "Help me sit up, please." He lifted her gently, and every movement felt electric, as if the years that had slipped between them dissolved in that charged air. "I saw the tire roll off the truck, but then I heard the crash, and I knew someone needed help," he said, voice low. Brooke realized he'd been driving that same highway. What were the odds? And he'd risked everything to save her. The heroism stirred something profound in Brooke's heart, recalling a side of Jack she'd never known, protector, confidant, soulmate. Yet guilt knotted in her chest as she thought of Ridge. Ridge and Taylor had only just mended their shattered marriage, forging a bond built on forgiveness and hope. How would Ridge react if he knew his wife's rescuer was the man she once planned to spend her life with? A man whose betrayal had haunted her dreams for years? Before Brooke could answer, Jack helped her to her feet and supported her as she limped away from the wreckage, sirens wailing in the distance. She glanced back once, eyes wide, but the mangled convertible had already disappeared around a bend, oblivious to the reunion it had forced upon them. Later, in the emergency room at Los Angeles Memorial, Brooke sat shivering on a cot in her hospital gown, an ice pack pressed to her forehead when Ridge Forrester walked in. His face, etched with concern, softened at the sight of her, and he wrapped her in an urgent embrace. "I heard there was an accident," he murmured, voice thick. "They said it was bad." Brooke inhaled, warmth flooding her as she nestled against him, the steady beat of his heart familiar and comforting. It was bad, she admitted. But someone saved me. Ridge looked puzzled. Someone? Who? Brooke drew a shaky breath. An old friend, someone I haven't seen in 10 years. She hesitated, guilt twisting inside her. Ridge's brow furrowed. Brooke, you're scaring me. Who was it? Brooke closed her eyes, vision swimming with fragments of the rescue. Jack's calloused hands, the urgency in his eyes, the way her heart had lurched at the sight of him. Jack Marone, she whispered. The name hit Ridge like a physical blow. His arms slackened, and he stared at her through a haze of disbelief and something darker, jealousy, anger, betrayal. Jack Marone, he repeated, voice hollow. Your ex-fiancé? The man who stood you up at the altar. Brooke winced at his bluntness, but he had a right to know. Yes, she said. He found me on the highway after my accident. He saved my life. Ridge's hands trembled as he gripped the hospital bed rail, knuckles white. Why didn't you call me? He demanded, eyes flashing. Would you have rushed to my side if roles were reversed? Brooke flinched. Of course I would, she whispered. But Jack, he was there, and I was scared. Ridge's face twisted with pain. You were scared of me? Brooke shook her head fiercely. No, I was scared of dying. I'm so sorry, Ridge. I should have called you as soon as I was stable, but I didn't know what else to do. Before Ridge could respond, the door opened and Taylor Forrester entered, her arms laden with fresh linens for Brooke's bed. Taylor's eyes flicked to Ridge's face, registering tension, then to Brooke's pale features. Is everything okay? She asked, setting the linens aside. Ridge turned away. Brooke's ex-fiancé just walked out of a 10-year disappearance to save her life. Taylor's brow arched. Jack Marone, she said softly. I heard he's been traveling overseas for years, working on shipping contracts or something. Brooke looked between them, dread settling in her chest like a stone. He's here now. Taylor's gaze warmed with sympathy, but Ridge's jaw clenched. He's here to interfere, Ridge said, bitterness creeping into his tone. He's here to ruin what we've rebuilt. Brooke reached for Ridge's hand. No, he's not, she said. He saved me. That's all. But as Taylor helped her settle back onto the bed, Brooke saw Ridge's eyes narrow with suspicion, Taylor's soft smile tinged with worry, and she realized the arrival of Jack Marone had cracked open the fragile shell of their newly reconciled marriage. Even as the hospital staff bustled around her, checking her vitals, charting her recovery, Brooke couldn't shake the echo of Jack's voice and the memory of his hands pulling her from certain death. Later, back at the Forrester estate, as Ridge paced the grand foyer and Taylor sat at the piano idly playing a mournful tune, Brooke wandered those halls like a ghost, torn between relief and fear. She retrieved her phone, scrolling to a blank message thread labeled Jack Marone, her thumb hovering over the screen. Should she thank him? Ask why he'd vanished all those years ago? Or should she keep her distance, protect the life she'd built with Ridge and Taylor? Every choice felt like a knife's edge. Finally, she typed a simple, thank you, hesitated, then erased it. Instead, she dialed the number Jack had given her at the hospital. Voicemail. She left a trembling message. Jack, this is Brooke. I just wanted to say thank you again. For everything. She hung up, heart pounding, and braced herself for the quiet that followed, thick with possibility. That night, as Ridge slept beside her in the master suite. His broad back turned, his breathing deep, and even Brooke lay awake, staring at the ceiling, mind racing. She recalled the fierceness in Jack's gaze, the way he'd risked his own life without hesitation. A decade ago, she'd believed in him, loved him with everything she had, until he'd abandoned her without explanation. What demons had chased him away? Why had he returned only in her moment of greatest need? As the moonlight cast silver shadows across the room, Brooke felt the walls around her marriage begin to tremble. She turned to the window, rising to pull aside the drapes and peer into the dark expanse beyond the balcony. The night was still, the ocean's distant roar a steady lullaby, but in her heart, a storm gathered. Jack Marone had reappeared, a ghost from her past wielding the power to save or destroy. Ridge deserved truth, Taylor deserved trust, and Brooke deserved to know whether this night in leather had come to reclaim a lost love or to heal a shattered soul. In that moment, with the salty breeze whispering secrets across her face, Brooke resolved that she would confront the past at dawn, no matter the cost. Because if she didn't, the life she'd fought so hard to save might slip through her fingers forever. Dawn broke over Los Angeles in a wash of pale gold as Brooke Logan slipped from the master suite into the hush of the Forrester estate. The night's anxious resolve still trembled beneath her skin, but she steeled herself against regret. Today she would seek the truth that had eluded her for 10 years. She crossed the marble floor and paused at the French doors, the garden beyond frosted with dew and still holding the echo of moonlight. Somewhere in those shadows, Jack Marone might be waiting. With a single breath, she stepped outside, the air cool against her hospital gown, and descended the stone steps toward the rose arbor. At the foot, she found him, Jack perched on the ornate bench, head bowed, hands clasped between his knees. He looked up as she approached, surprised, vulnerable, as though the past decade dissolved in that silent moment. "Jack," she murmured, voice unsteady. He rose, the muscles in his shoulders tense. "Brooke," he said quietly. The single word carried all the weight of the years they'd lost. She drew in a shaky breath. "I needed to know, why did you leave? Why that night before our wedding?" Jack's jaw clenched. He stared past her at the morning haze. "I'd been working on a deal, shipping routes from Marseille to Mumbai. I thought I could juggle it all. You, the company, the promise of a future. But when I saw evidence of corporate espionage, Forrester designs turning up in knockoffs, I thought, if I came back, I'd only bring you danger. I left to protect you." Brooke's throat tightened. "You left me to protect me?" Her voice cracked, hurt and disbelief weaving together. "I thought I was saving you from my world." He lifted his gaze, eyes dark with remorse. "But all I did was break your heart." She held up a trembling hand. "I spent years wondering what I did wrong, convincing myself you never loved me enough to show up." His lips parted, sorrow flooding his face. "Brooke, there aren't enough apologies in the world." She closed her eyes against the pain. "And now you show up, 10 years too late, just as my life is whole again." He stepped closer, voice low. "Whole? With Ridge? With Taylor?" Brooke's heart clenched. The betrayal she'd felt in the hospital only magnified in daylight. "My marriage, our marriage, deserves the truth, Jack. But so do I." Jack drew a ragged breath. "I didn't plan to return to Los Angeles. I came back to bury the past, to start over somewhere I didn't know your name. But when I heard about your accident," his words trailed as he looked at her like she'd been the axis on which his entire world spun. Brooke swallowed. "And you saved me. God knows I'm grateful. But you can't just walk back into my life and demand forgiveness." Jack's gaze hardened with determination. "I'm not demanding forgiveness. I came to tell you why and to see if, maybe after everything, you could let me be part of your life again, even as a friend." Brooke's pulse fluttered. Part of her ached to believe him, to recapture the reckless hope of youth. But Ridge needed honesty and Taylor needed stability. Friendship's out of the question, she said quietly. I'm married to Ridge, and my first priority is to make this right with him. Jack nodded, sorrowful pride gleaming in his eyes. I'll respect that. I just wanted you to know the truth. He turned, began walking back toward the house, and Brooke watched him go, torn between relief and longing. Inside, Ridge and Taylor awaited her in the kitchen. Ridge's eyes darkened when he saw her return alone. Taylor's lips pressed into a thin line. Brooke exhaled. I talked to Jack. Ridge's jaw tightened. What did he say? Taylor reached out, laying a gentle hand on Ridge's arm. She says he explained why he left. Ridge's glare flicked to Brooke. And? Brooke drew herself upright. He left to protect me from threats to the Forrester legacy. He thought if he stayed, he'd bring espionage to my doorstep. Ridge's expression shifted from suspicion to cautious empathy. He didn't tell anyone ever until now? No, Brooke said. Not until he thought you were in danger of losing me forever. Taylor squeezed Brooke's hand. At least he finally came clean. Ridge stared at the floor, wrestling with conflicting emotions. Brooke crossed to him, placing her hand over his heart. I love you, Ridge. You know that. But I need to heal this wound. I can't carry Jack's secret like a phantom. It's poisoning everything. Ridge looked up, his dark gaze meeting hers. Then we face it together. Relief washed through Brooke as Taylor offered a small, encouraging smile. Taylor cleared her throat. I'll prepare your breakfast, Brooke. You need energy for whatever comes next. Brooke nodded gratefully as Taylor moved to the stovetop. Ridge slipped an arm around Brooke's waist. Thank you for telling me. She rested her head on his shoulder. Thank you for listening. Later that afternoon, Ridge returned to Forrester Creations with Brooke's design sketches in hand, determination burning in his chest. The gallant room, once a haven of creativity, felt charged with uncertainty. He found Jack Marone standing before a sprawling mood board of runway gowns, studying the sketches with that same intensity he'd applied to mapping shipping lanes years ago. Jack turned at Ridge's approach, stance wary. Ridge, he said curtly. Ridge's eyes bore into him. We need to talk. Jack nodded, motioning toward a corner of the room. Ridge followed, heart pounding. I don't know everything you went through, Jack, Ridge began, but I do know the woman I love nearly died on that highway. Jack's gaze dropped. You have every right to hate me. Ridge's voice wavered. I don't hate you, but I don't trust you yet. Brooke deserves better. Jack raised a hand. I won't interfere with your marriage. I came back to set things right, nothing more. Ridge studied Jack, searching for hidden motives. After a beat, he exhaled. Then prove it. Work with me, not against me. Help Forrester survive this season. Jack's head tilted. You want me to join the company? Ridge inclined his head. If you're willing. For Brooke's sake. Jack's gaze flicked to the sketches Ridge carried. Her designs, they're incredible. I've seen a lot across the world, but this is something special. Ridge felt pride swell. Then welcome to the team. In the glow of the late afternoon, as Ridge extended his hand and Jack clasped it firmly, a fragile truce formed, one that Brooke would soon learn about. And as the sun dipped below the Los Angeles skyline, casting long shadows through the gallant room, Brooke stood at her easel in the drafting studio, feeling the tension coiling like a spring around her heart. Tomorrow, she would unveil her collection at Fashion Week, revealing designs inspired by love, loss, and redemption. She glanced at the guest list, spotting Ridge's name, Taylor's name, and unbidden, Jack Marone's. A tremor of doubt ran through her. Could she face them both under those brilliant lights? Could she stand at the apex of her career while the men she loved, and once loved, watched from the front row? The answer hovered just beyond her reach as the studio lights flickered on illuminating rows of sketches pinned to the walls. Brooke exhaled, lifting her pencil. The runway awaited, and with it, the ultimate reckoning, a collision of past and present that would decide the fate of her heart, her marriage, and the legacy she'd fought a lifetime to build. Tomorrow, everything would change. And in that moment before dawn's earliest break, Brooke Logan resolved to be ready.